Hey everybody, I'm David Bloom with Next TMT. I am here with Jason Cohen, CEO and co-founder of MyBundle, which aims to impose some moderate sense of sanity in an insane universe of ever multiplying broadband providers, cable and streaming services, et cetera, et cetera. And we're going to talk a little bit today about what they do, where they sit in this entire ecosystem that just keeps metastasizing, and why it's kind of important to have somebody on your side. So welcome, Jason.
David, thanks for having me. This is great to be here.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit, if we could, to start. MyBundle does a lot of stuff. And it's a little bit difficult, I think, in some ways to get your arms around all of it. But let's start with, you've got relationships with more than 320 broadband providers. Who knew there were that many? But there are. Talk about your relationship with them and then your relationship with consumers wanting to take advantage of that broadband, that high-speed connection, to do something like watch shows. Where do you guys sit in all that?
Sure. Yeah. And most people are surprised. You talk to people, especially in the media industry, they assume sometimes there's 6 internet providers in the country, but really there's close to 3,000. And you're talking about the biggest, Comcast and Charter control half the market. But when you hear about all that competition and you hear about smaller guys, there's hundreds of private equity, VC-backed, public infrastructure funds, and it's just building fiber everywhere. And then there are a lot of wireless internet service providers. And we're talking about local, regional, electric co-ops, you name it. A lot of closing the digital divide. Whenever you hear that term, that's like our partners that are really out there working to do that, bringing internet to people for the first time, as well as bringing choice and competition as well. So we could maybe, if there's time, get to that. But ultimately, one of the big things that consumers have been saying is, but what do I do about TV? And a lot of these providers don't have their own TV service. The cost of providing your own TV service is increasing. And so many of these guys look at their customers and are there actually to help their customers, not just to make the next buck. And like I could speak to now over the last few years, that's really happening. And so ultimately, what we're about is helping their customers and their shoppers figure out, how do I get the content I want at the cheapest price? Maybe I'm willing to pay a little bit more if I only need one app. Maybe if I'm willing to save a bunch and give up a few channels, I'm willing to take 2 or 3. And as this industry continues to evolve, we're 2 weeks away from the launch of ESPN and Fox One, and Fubo's Sports is coming, and who knows what comes next with Paramount. And ultimately, it's a brand new world where there's 60, 70 million households that have cut the cord already. And what do, right? How do you find your next show to watch? And so we just think ultimately
it's really crazy, right? Because this is a week when there's just this explosion of sports options. But more generally, people, I think, still kind of tend to think about, like, the cable guy gave you TV over a pipe that was a pretty high-speed pipe, that then they started doing internet, and then they broke those apart into really separate businesses. And there's a bunch of companies fighting over giving you a big fat pipe. And then there's companies giving you access to entertainment, sometimes in a bundle. And the Comcasts and Charters of the world do their bundles, their different things. But lots of guys are like, no, we just do fast pipes. That's what we do. But what are you going to do with this, right? So now we've got even more options. In 2 weeks, we're going to have $50 worth of apps with lots of sports and some news on the Fox side and other odds and ends. That alone will be a big deal. And Netflix and YouTube and all those things. And how do you make it all make sense? Plus whatever's left of the traditional linear channels. So how do you help the channels find audiences, and how do you help audiences find the channels they want?
Sure. Well, one key thing there is those big pipes. It's not that they want to be big dumb pipes, right? They want to be smart big pipes, but it doesn't make sense below a certain size to invest the capital, invest in the technology to do it yourselves. And that's just to put a pin on that. That's what MyBundle does, right? MyBundle is streaming aggregation for the rest of the broadband industry that are not numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's sort of our goal there. But the same problems, the streaming services themselves also have problems, right? What the problems? How do they find customers that are attracted to their content in a cost-effective way? How do they retain those customers? Right. If a customer churns, how do they reclaim them? And so our idea is very simply, if you can take a whole bunch of people and sort them into the different groups and sort them and help them find the content and the services and really the bundles, hence MyBundle, right? Like ultimately
one group of bundled people might be folks who want lifestyle and reality shows, and another one might be sports or whatever, or news, and you help them get all that. Right?
Exactly. And I think the idea is in this new age, there's millions of combinations. If you just take the top 9 streaming services and figure out the permutations, you could have, I think it's 1,064,000 different combinations. Okay. And that's just the 9. Forget about the next 100. So ultimately, this doesn't have to be that complicated. That's our message. Technology can solve this. This isn't a technology problem. We built it. We built a subscription management engine where you, David, can give us your credit card and we can sell you a thing. We can sell you a bundle of things. The issue is really, how do you get so many parties to get on the same page, right? How do you get so many parties? And so what we're seeing in the industry is the big cable guys saying, we'll step forward and we'll bundle. The big telcos will do it. Some of the streaming services themselves trying to get together and build their own bundles. This is our bet. This is what we believe, is that if you are a streaming service, it should be yes, 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 and yes, right? It's not one or the other. Of course, you're going to work with Amazon. For the most part, you have to. You're going to work with Google. You're going to work with Apple. You're going to work with Comcast. The idea, though, is where else can you look? Can this industry horizontally bundle? Does it, or do you need that wheel and spoke model? Do you need something in the middle to really pull the various people together? Ultimately, with the explosion of ad-supported streaming, we think that's the big game changer. So when it was just SVOD, it was a game. Can I sell a subscription? That's it. Is somebody paying me every month? I make money. If they're not, I'm not. With the rise of every now streaming service having an ad-supported version, that means it's also about time. It's how do I get somebody to watch more? I want you to watch my next show on Paramount Plus so that I can make more. Yeah, and so ultimately, that's where you get into that content side also.
I mean, like, engagement is really the watchword for Netflix and YouTube, but it's like everybody in Hollywood went, it looks like this is maybe kind of important that you keep them there and keep them subscribing and keep them connected. So when our next thing comes out, they'll check that out too. But we can't produce enough. Not everybody's Netflix. So they've got to figure out how to engage and keep folks around. So part of your to the content providers is we will help your audiences, give them reasons to stick around, right?
Exactly. So it's not just find the service. Then it's like, I have the service. What shows are interesting to me on that service? Then next show, if I go to my TV and I put Netflix on, that's the first app I go to every time, and I don't get to my 4th app, well, how am I going to find that next great show? There's a lot of great content on it. We think we all agree there's a ton of great content. The TV operating systems, where do they fit into that role? Ultimately, we have a mobile app that acts like your streaming TV guide that brings all that in and allows you to create watch lists and share those watch lists and search for shows and filter. And all that's going to get a lot smarter with the AI that we're working on right now. Not to use, it's not a buzzword, it's reality, but it's we think we're on this precipice of just like really, really, really having the technology to make this all simpler, to just have such a better experience for the consumer. And it all kind of comes together where we think about our stakeholders of consumers, making their lives simpler, streaming services, and the broadband providers, and really just creating these win-win-win-wins, bundling it all together. And we can talk about that also, because that's where the magic really happens for both broadband providers and streaming services and consumers.
So, but I don't want to lose the AI component here, because everybody's spending money on AI. Everybody's spending a lot of money on AI, but they're doing it for a smarter experience within their own app, right? And what you're saying is we're providing an overarching AI umbrella to figure out, you like police procedurals. Well, it's not just Dick Wolf shows. It's going to be not just Law and Order and CSI and Chicago PD, but there's some other stuff on BritBox, and there's some stuff over here. And you've got these, or you might want to get these also, right? And we make it easy for you to sign up and put that in your bundle, your specific bundle of cop shows in really murderous tiny towns in England.
Right. Well, and I think what's crazy is with the models like an OpenAI will allow us to get to that level of granularity. Now, the interesting thing is you might like what you just described, but that's not all you want to watch.
Right.
And so there is going to be a never ending investment cycle, right? Of just getting and saying like, how do we get better and better and better? But if you think about where we came from, this is the content on the app. There's so much levels to get better and better and better and better, to bring that all together. And then you think about what that world could look like. Why does it have to be monthly subscriptions? Can it be shorter than monthly subscriptions, right? Is it automatic on and off? By the way, the easier what we find from consumers, the harder you make to turn off a streaming service, the less likely that customer is ever going to subscribe to again. So are you better off saying, you know what? Here's the door, pause your subscription. Or, hey, how about this? When season 2 of a show we know you watch comes out, let's show that again. And again, for the consumer, having a central clearinghouse, a central place to be able to take that on the go for recommendations from friends, etc. We really think a massive opportunity to simplify this. And it's not just going to be going to ChatGPT and just typing in text, but what if we could bring that experience into a contextual, content filled with trailers and images and art, makes for a really, really cool kind of future, we think.
Absolutely. It's one of the things that the studies have been showing, the consumer use studies have been showing, is more channels are being subscribed to, but more, particularly younger audiences, are in and out more. So if you can actually make that easier and say, okay, I'm a Stranger Things geek, but I don't really care about the rest of Netflix. Say, hey, final season's coming up. You want to get back in? Okay, let's go. But reminding somebody, hey, it's available, I could see would be really, really valuable to that audience. How do you improve the stickiness, though, for the broadband provider and for the providers of the content itself?
Yeah, so that's what's been really cool, frankly, in the last few months alone, just getting more and more data in from our partners and from our broadband providers, and just seeing that, right? One of the things that we do is we actually realize, like, wait a second, the broadband, you've seen the offers, sign up for an internet, get a $300 Home Depot card or a $200 Applebee card. Maybe that's a lot of money for Applebee's, right? Or Visa cash card.
That's a lot of fried onion rings.
That's a lot of, right. I'll admit I've never eaten there. So ultimately though, we saw like, wait a second, what are people doing with all this broadband, with all this internet? They're streaming. That's what we're all doing. Why not connect the two? And so what we started to do is we basically built our own gift card program effectively, where our broadband providers are able to offer streaming services and streaming credits, whether it's a one-time card. Then we realized, wait a second, even better than giving somebody $200 to go spend on streaming, what if they were monthly credits? What if, as long as you stay an internet customer, you continue to get, and again, is this rocket science, right? The big telcos have been doing this for a while. What we're doing is just bringing it, right, and bringing it to the broadband industry for them to be able to, literally as easy as a click, right? Effectively, they get started, they work with us, we handle everything. We handle the management of the cards, the program, the questions. And so what it allows the broadband providers to do is give a very tangible, relevant incentive that the customer only can continue to have if they stay with broadband. They're happy to, right? You talked about it before. There was video, there was internet. The internet is a massive high margin product. Video is a 0 to potentially negative margin product at this point. And so there's a lot of opportunity where the higher the speed, the more you can give away. And so what we're finding is that when the customer actually uses the credits, and not everyone uses it, right? How many gift cards have you gotten that they stay in your drawer, you just forget about it? So there's an economic incentive here as well.
There's a little 7% margin of never being used that's also valuable to the merchant, right? So
there's that. There's a lot. It's a lot more. There's a lot. What we've discovered is there's a lot of breakage in the gift card business. But what we recently discovered is that when the customer uses it, they actually churn less from broadband. So if you use the card to actually get the credits to pay for or subscribe to a streaming service, you're less likely to cancel your internet service than if you don't, which is the multi-billion-dollar equation for the broadband provider. But we also found, and comparing it to antenna data that they've put out, is that when you give people streaming credits, the churn for streaming is half of what the industry is as well. And so you have this.
That's a really big deal.
And again, think about your gut. If somebody gave you're not paying it for yourself, it's coming from your internet provider, you're probably less likely to cancel it. Similarly, if you get your streaming from your broadband provider, and now all of a sudden you see another internet offer, Are you going to go change internet provider? It's already a little bit of a pain, but now I got to figure out how to change my streaming service. So the stickiness here that we think is going to be on both sides, we're just scratching the surface. By working together as an industry, we think this all becomes even more seamless. And so we're really excited about what we're working on today with deeper integrations with the streaming services. And if I could snap my fingers, that's the only piece that's missing, right? And so there's a lot going on there.
Where do the TV OSs, because those have been multiplying. I mean, I had a conversation with the Trade Desk's head of Ventura, for instance, recently, and he's an interesting guy. Love what they're doing. Again, they're like you. They're trying to be a little bit, Switzerland, right? Helping everybody else. But where do they fit within what you guys do?
Yeah, so right now we don't have, we call ourselves device agnostic. We are happy to work with everybody. We actually have a partnership with Roku, where today our broadband partners can choose to give away free Rokus to their customers. If you think about it, who's better if you had that call, the TV OS wars, right? What's the game? How do I get distribution? Well, our broadband partners are bringing internet to people who are like, well, what's a smart TV? What do I do? There's still millions and millions and millions of people like that. And so ultimately, what we'd love to have a TV app that could be meta search and all that. Without getting into the details, not all the TV platforms like to play nice, but we certainly believe that is a obviously very important control. And we look to work and really our model is a partnership model. I view MyBundle, sure, we're a technology company, but it's really all about doing the hard work to building partnerships with multiple parties, bringing it all together, and then building out that distribution for others. So the TV operating system, important. The TV screen, important. My own personal bias is there's a reason that we started this call off saying, oh my God, I still can't find something to watch. It's so complicated. Billions of dollars being poured into the TV, investment in building out that experience. My personal bias is that the TV alone will never do the trick. I really believe that this guy over here is just as important in terms of content discovery, content management, the web, the internet, right? As opposed to just on the TV. So I think the more that the players we all can come together and really work together and make it more seamless. Again, whether it's when should I get my next show? Is it just the TV screen? Is that just the place? How often when you talk to your friends, you're at a bar, you're at a restaurant, who doesn't have a conversation where you say, hey, what have you watched lately? Right. How often does that conversation happen in front of a TV screen?
Well, that happens a lot for me, I'll tell you, because it's like, you write about television. Like, what are you watching? I mean, it's like, oh, God. It's like you're a doctor. I've got this thing on my foot. It's like, don't take your shoe off. It's kind of like that. But
when somebody asks you that question, how often are you holding your TV remote in your hand? Barely, never. Right? That conversation is happening when you have your phone in your hand. And so imagine if you could just be like
a glass of alcohol in my
hand. Well, you'll get one hand at each, that's fine.
Right.
But ultimately, that's where we think, again, when you asked about the TVOS, man, that's the best place to watch TV, right? I'm fully on board with that. But ultimately, this content, forget about getting into UGC and short form video and that whole world. We just think that if everyone's mind is open to yes, as opposed to, well, that's not how things are done. The only thing that's going to hurt everybody is if the attitude of, well, that's not how things are done. And that's my only thing that I can say now after doing this for a bunch of years. Consumers can be in a much better situation. The companies, the media companies, broadband, and thankfully most people have that attitude. But that's really I think, again, the most important thing.
It's interesting because in my household, we have multiple TV OSs. So that alone says we need somebody, again, who's Switzerland, right? I've got a Roku on my work desk and in the bedroom, and I've got a Sony TV with Google TV built in it and an Apple TV device sitting on top of that.
So ultimately, again, and meta search, this has worked for the travel. And I mean, you think about airlines and booking hotels.
And Expedias, right? I mean,
and it's a very right. The difference between an Expedia or booking hotels, there's 50,000, 100,000, 500,000 hotels. But even when you want to book an airline ticket, do you go to 7 different airline sites? No, you go to Google Flights. Right? Maybe you go to Expedia, wherever your favorite thing to go to, but I want to go from A to B. Show me the different ways to get there. And that's when we started MyBundle. That was the thought. It was literally modeled off of that idea of consumers want X. How can they get it? How can we make it simple? Again, back to that AI concept and technology and new form factors. Cable providers, frankly, 1 to 3,000. right? How much time does it take to build stuff? But I feel even more confident saying 6 to 3,000 or 10 to 3,000, whatever you want to draw the line. Man, they should not be spending their time building AI bots to make content recommendations, right?
That is not that's not their core specialty. Absolutely.
No.
And they won't get the money back, as you say. It is a matter of scale. Jason, one of the interesting things, we've got a couple of new, very attractive, but very expensive apps coming down. And I understand that more generally, part of what you do is make it easier for those guys, not those two in particular, Fox and Disney in particular, but generally to be able to get bundled at a wholesale price that doesn't get in the way of their retail price. How does that work?
Yeah, so I think it's a really cool feature, right? If you think about a broadband provider wanting to give away something of value, they're saying it's on us, right? It's not a price, it's on us. And so if the service costs $15 just to pick a service, and the streaming service is willing to accept $10 or $7 or $2, right? Name the price. We are that middleman. Like, we are the mechanism by which the broadband provider is giving away more value than they're actually paying. The streaming service is now getting more customers than they otherwise might have. And so it's price discrimination 101, where they can now not ruin a retail price that they want to set in the market. And the same thing applies horizontally. If two streamings, by the way, we're doing that, what I just described, we're doing that today. If two streaming services wanted to get together and offer a bundle at a lower price than individual, we also have those capabilities today, whether it's directly to consumers at our own website or through our broadband providers. And so this mechanism for us being a way for the industry to bundle themselves and to bundle with broadband and play with these different wholesale rates is very much on the table. And frankly, a really exciting part of what we think is coming down the pipe.
Well, this is probably a good place to wrap this up. We are here with the man who makes yes possible, Jason Cohen, the co-founder and CEO of MyBundle. I'm David Bloom with Next TMT, and thank you a lot, Jason. Really interesting stuff that MyBundle's trying to do. A lot of problems you're trying to solve.
Keeps us busy. David, appreciate the time. Have a great